Straight run up.
Now he angles it somewhat. Barkadash.
Where do I start? It's been up and down.
I remember being a kid.
I can see that happening.
That's something, there's always something to do. The Unlaced.
Unlaced podcast. It's actually not bad.
And we're live. We're back, everyone. The Unlaced podcast, our third episode of the year. Before we get into this one, I just wanted to wrap up last week, the one with Tommy Sheridan. If you haven't checked that out, please do. It was an absolute awesome episode. Tommy is one of the funniest mans alive, and honestly, we had an absolute ball in that episode. But even more so, we linked up to go watch the Super Bowl final the other day at the Ascot Vale Hotel, which was an absolute ripper, and that's going to be coming out on the Unlaced podcast channels as a vlog, which has got a lot of beer and a lot of laughter involved, as you can imagine. So, again, to the subscribers, all the listeners out there, the people sharing this platform, really do appreciate it. It's how we grow, so thank you so much. I've actually been wanting to get this person on for a little bit now because the story around this person is maybe slightly different to some of the other stories that we've had on the show in regards to sport and also life, but a journey, to say the least, of what this man has been through and where he's sort of got to now. So with no further introduction, I'd like to introduce Liam Twomey.
Thanks, mate.
How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. That's a good intro.
It was pretty strong.
Yeah, I like that.
I should introduce you as almost, well, you're not Paralympian yet, but a para-athlete anyway, because of the amount of training and stuff you're putting into all your sporting world. But what's been going on, mate? How are you? Like, how's life?
Life's pretty good. Life is strange. It feels strange sometimes to be, doing the things I'm doing and living the life I am, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm pretty stoked with where I'm at the moment. And yeah, like you said, life's been interesting for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's funny because we actually reconnected. And for those that don't know mine or Liam's relationship, we went to high school together before I moved to the AIS in Canberra at the end of year 9. So we were in high school from year 7, 8, 9 together, weren't we?
Yeah.
At Corporate Grammar. And oddly, we reconnected through a couple of messages, but I was doing a 75-day hard challenge, which was involving a couple workouts a day, and I was changing them up from running or gym, and I tried to do some stuff that wasn't always on my legs. So I started doing swimming, and then out of nowhere, someone put up a video of me swimming, and Liam just saw it and sent me a note saying, and if you want some help, I can improve your stroke.
I probably wouldn't say what you were doing with swimming at that point. But,
it was a bit of a cheap shot, but in all honesty, the infamous day at GSAC.
Yeah,
I want to touch on that because you gave me about 3 or 4 principles around technique to just try and do. And I thought I was a pretty good swimmer. And then once I started trying to do these sort of little techniques with my hands or my shoulders, I started swimming sideways. Yeah. And I thought, this isn't going well. Like, I don't know. And then you were kind of like looking at me and like, oh, it might be a bit hard here. And then, I don't know, it just kind of clicked.
Yeah.
And I started flying. And I was like, okay, wow, you really do actually know your stuff. So
yeah, thanks. It was actually concerning when you forgot how to swim after I told you to do a few
I
things.
didn't I?
Yeah, I thought, I'm in a bit of trouble here. This usually isn't how it goes. It usually works.
Oh, man. It was,
but it worked out, and it was good. Like, that's it. It's only a few little things sometimes to think about, and it's a massive difference.
Well, by the end of it, I was racing people and overtaking people.
Yeah.
So
belting
whilst cramping in my foot. So I was like,
belting old blokes in the pool.
Yeah, belting old bloke and telling them where to go, which we love. Now,
Right.
I do want to touch on your story and why it's unique, and we are going to get into, obviously, the great work you're doing now with all your triathlons and I guess just your endurance events that you take part in general. But where I sort of came to know you and obviously was at the start of year 7 was probably well after sort of, I guess, life took a bit of a turn for you. But it was early on in your life when you came sort of diagnosed with cancer, and I guess moved where you had to get your leg amputated, was it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got diagnosed with a Ewing sarcoma, which is like a rare bone cancer in my right foot or right leg, when I was 7 in 2001. So 20 years ago.
Wow.
And look, I just was hanging around school, felt a bit sore, couldn't really walk right. And my folks were like, probably need to go get that looked at, mate. And I went and did a few scans and sort of they kept checking and then, they found the cancer in my leg from there.
Was anything visible or was it just like feeling?
No, nothing visible. I just had a lot of pain, like putting weight on it and stuff.
Yeah.
And as a result, I did chemo and spent a lot of time at the Royal Children's, more than most kids like to spend at the hospital.
Gosh.
And the result was that I went in for a surgery later that year to have some of my fibula taken out of my left leg and put in my right and just have a bone graft done and get the cancer removed. But because of where it was in my leg near my growth plate, I just had to have it amputated on the spot, sort of for the best bet and the best recovery. And
Yeah.
I came out a little bit shorter than I than I went in, and here we are.
Wow, man. What was like I can imagine it must have been a pretty tough time in general for everyone, including yourself. But when you're 7 years old, did you really comprehend what was happening? Like to the level of obviously, the longevity of what that action would take and what that would mean?
Nah, I think I was pretty lucky to be blissfully unaware. 7-year-olds are pretty resilient and they just
Yeah.
want to go back and hang out with their mates and just get on with things. So it was good in one sense that I was that young, but it was also really tough because everyone else around me had to deal with it and I just had to get back into things, and I hated physio, I hated doing all that stuff, and I just wanted to go back to school.
Yeah.
Just wanted to go kick the footy with my mates, and hated that my leg was sore and didn't fit right and all those little dramas that I had to deal with from there. But I definitely didn't expect that it would affect me as much as it did when it happened.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Because I can imagine for you, and at that time, sorry, did you always have like a prosthetic leg straight away, or what was sort of the process?
Yeah, pretty quickly. I was pretty much back walking and sort of running, to a degree within a couple of months.
Yeah.
Just running around because you're a kid. Kids just
Yeah.
work it out.
Yeah.
You don't have that awareness
You
around your body.
adjust,
You
yeah.
just work out how to make it work, whether it's right or not. You just work out how to get from A to B really quickly.
Wow. And then what was those like initial days or initial years, I guess, in primary school like for you?
Look, it was actually pretty good. Like I went
Yeah.
to a really small, little, nice, like safe, secure primary school, and I was like a god coming back in my wheelchair here and there when I was
Yeah.
sick.
Hail in,
Yeah,
totally.
coming back from the dead. And when I went back to school, my mates just treated me like normal. No one treated me any differently, and that was really the blessing for me that I could just get back into things. But yeah, it was a little bit of a false sense of security when you move from that to high school.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah, well, because for me and we were obviously good friends in high school, but one of the most notable things when I first met you was your leg, because
Yeah.
obviously you had like a slight limp, and like you're well. The other thing that was notable was that you were a rat bag as well. But
Yeah, thanks.
like, what's your memories of those in high school? Because from the outside and being your mate, it didn't seem like they were easy days for you.
Yeah.
I think whether it was from people sort of challenging your physical stature, or just even for you to sort of integrate in with sort of everyone as well.
Yeah, look, it was actually really difficult looking back on it, and probably at the time as well. I didn't want to accept the fact that that was my life. Like I wanted to feel like everyone else. And I went to this big school, and there's 1,500 kids, and everyone's got both legs. And I think, fuck, I'm in a bit of strife here. Like, I'm sticking out a bit here.
Yeah.
And, I just didn't want to accept it. I had one of those legs that sort of had a cover on it, so it looked realistic. And realistically, that looks even more out of order than anything else. And, I just found it really challenging to just get physical and like get involved in things. I wanted to just play footy and play soccer and do whatever, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
Mainly because I was a little bit chubby and lazy as well.
Yeah.
That didn't
we
help.
we can't let that slide.
Yeah. But any excuse to blame it on my leg and me feeling different and less than everyone else, you know? So it definitely had its moments.
Yeah. Was there like, how did you handle that bullying though? Because like for me, I'm being around you. I think we might have. I think one of the fights I got in high school was off someone taking the piss out of your leg.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember it. It was like when we were in the year 8 building, and we were at the taps, and someone said something to you, and we just got up and just like, that's not right. But like, how did you handle that? And were you in those days, were you ever able to even handle that? I guess.
Look, that doesn't ring. Like, I don't remember that, to be honest, because I had a lot of experiences like that.
Yeah, well, I
where,
imagine,
I
right?
had a
Yeah.
lot of that. And like, before anyone feels any self-pity for me or sorry for me, like, usually I'd started it.
Yeah.
So that was the problem. That was the problem. I was never innocent. I was never
No,
innocently,
you weren't.
I
You
was never
weren't.
innocently picked on. I was a prick, to be honest,
Yeah.
like, for the most part. And I dished it out. And kids are cruel. Kids, that's just how kids are. Everyone wants to, in high school, fit in and feel a part of something. And if anyone attacks that or like threatens it, you do whatever you can to like get rid of that person and win,
Yeah.
So everyone's first attack was on my leg because I snapped at it every time. I never was able to let it slide.
Yeah.
And I really held on to it, and it hurt because more so like people call me a cripple and, peg leg and pirate and things like that. It hurt more because that's how I thought about myself at that time.
Yeah.
I really didn't like myself and who I was and my life and my experiences. And then when people said that to me, it just reinforced how I felt about myself.
Yeah.
And like, I've obviously got a lot of that in hindsight now. I wasn't that aware at the time. I just, I'll just punch him, like get violent, that'll sort it. And it never worked. It just made people more wary of dealing with me.
Yeah.
And I didn't fit into that mold of the school really in my behaviour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because did you think like because you were receiving so much attention? Because I probably would have said that you was. I don't know if you were like you bullied people, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't call you a bully because I don't think yours sort of came from like an evil place. Like I think you were constantly in that light, so it was like you just kind of felt the need to stand up for yourself or make other people feel maybe the same.
Yeah.
And it was like it was probably hard for you as well.
Exactly. Like it had its moments. Like to be honest, I hung a lot of shit on my mates as well. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
it wasn't
bloody
just
hell you did.
people. Like I still give it to a lot of my mates.
Yeah.
Like that's just sort of how I am. But when I did that to people that I wasn't friends with, that's not really how it works when you don't know them, and
Yeah.
people don't enjoy that.
Yeah.
And I was pretty relentless. I won't lie. Like I gave it to some kids sometimes, and I feel bad about it. I've had to go back to it and like look at it because the behavior was pretty rough.
Yeah.
And that was me just doing what I needed to do at that point. But it was pretty like heavy sometimes.
Yeah, well, and at this point in time, you weren't really playing like competitive sport or anything. Like you
No.
didn't have sort of an outlet outside of maybe like your school and social life.
Nah.
From memory, because I'm just trying to draw the
Yeah.
sort of the storyline or timeline for
Yeah,
the
exactly.
listeners. That you kind of weren't really involved in sort of any elite sporting environments at this point.
Nah, far from it. I was playing like C soccer.
PlayStation.
Yeah, PlayStation. I was doing all the sports that finished quickly. So I
Yeah.
moved from cricket to tennis,
Yeah.
basketball because it was inside instead of soccer in winter,
Yeah.
anything. I was just lazy as.
Yeah.
And I just wanted it to be over with. And I just didn't think I was physically capable enough. I sort of got to high school and I'm like, I don't really like being in a classroom. I don't really like sport or, enjoy physical activity. I just want to do nothing and like be a bit of a rat bag like with my mates, and that was it.
So how was like? You got into a bit of trouble in high school, but like,
Yeah.
was sort of the back end of high school. Where were you sort of at in your own headspace?
Oh, I wasn't in a great place, to be honest. I think I thought I was doing really well. Like my teenage years pretty much resulted with me doing the wrong thing in school and doing the wrong thing outside of school.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty obsessive and compulsive, hence the triathlon and sport stuff now.
Yeah, which is good.
But you feed that into the wrong stuff. And as a teenager, like I was just reckless, and I love drinking and taking drugs. And that was pretty much, I found that and I'm like, this is sick, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
That was my purpose.
Yeah.
That was it. Like,
Really?
I'm going to do this. I'm going to be really good at this.
Really
and
good
that's
at
going to be that.
Drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, mad.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
When did you start taking drugs? Like, well,
Um,
drinking. Like, I assume probably most people in high school when I was there
Yeah.
were drinking.
Yeah. Jeez, it must have been like year 9. Yeah.
Year 9.
Yeah,
like
year
15
9.
or something.
Yeah, 14 because I was younger from my
Okay.
younger
Wow.
for a year. Yeah, so I was like 14.
Yeah.
And look, I wasn't drinking much, a few beers here and there,
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
wasted. But I just remember drinking and not caring what anyone thought about me. Like I
Really?
had so much thinking going on. Like I clearly looking back on it was pretty like anxious and wound up,
Yeah.
and there was a lot going on because I didn't talk about how I felt.
Yeah.
But when I drank, I couldn't have cared less.
Yeah.
I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
This is sick. I'm just going to do this, whatever. And I get roasted by my folks for doing it, and that was it. I just couldn't care.
Because didn't you have like which is like the most famous man ever when you were at Corford Grammar, Mr. Newton, the principal, because I think he was there for so long. But
Yeah.
didn't you have you had some sort of meeting with him when it was like a final warning? Like
Yeah.
You almost got expelled essentially.
Yeah, pretty
from
much.
school.
Yeah, that was like as close as I came. I think I must have been year 11 or year 12, and I had a meeting with Mr. Newton in his office with my folks, and I'd been suspended a lot, like like a lot, way
Yeah.
more times than
But
I
for
think.
what? Just like bad behaviour in
Just
class?
bad
or-
behavior and bullying and bits and pieces here and there. And
Right.
because I created like a reputation for myself for being that kind of guy, if I ever did anything, I always copped it, always.
Yeah.
And that was just how it was. That's how it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And, I always brought it on myself. But I was having this meeting with him and he's like, Liam, now just look me. He's looked me straight in the eyes and look over my shoulder. Is anyone there? And I'm like, nah, what are you talking about? There's no one else here. And he's like, yeah, that's right. This is the end of the line, mate. Like, this is it. And I'm like looking at my folks like, geez, I'm in a bit of strife here.
Oh, wow.
Because I'd never taken it seriously. I'd always
Yeah.
like, whatever.
Was that the
you know?
first time the penny dropped with that sort of stuff at school?
A little bit, like that someone had been that nicely serious with me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of teachers as well, because I was like a handful and I really didn't give teachers anything. And if I got in trouble, I just was a smart ass on purpose to just aggravate it. And teachers didn't like that. Some really cared about us, like the little rough group we had that mucked her out.
Yeah.
But some just wanted us out, you know,
Yeah.
which is fair. But
Yeah.
it wasn't a personal attack on them. I just didn't like being at school
Right.
in that sense.
Wow. So that if we can talk post high school, because this for me is where we sort of went different paths, because I was
Yeah.
playing soccer and obviously wasn't living in Melbourne, and I'd pretty much lost all contact with you. But
Yeah.
from sort of speaking to you since we've caught up the last few weeks, like I understand that you were having sort of like, you were in trouble with the police. You're also like, having trouble with a lot of your relationships at home or with your friendship groups. That was sort of everything was disbanding. Like what was that sort of period like? And I guess what sort of trouble were you getting in at that time?
Yeah. So I was an idiot, like a stage 5 idiot, really.
Is this just getting like worse and worse and worse, like with the drugs and alcohol
considerably. Like I got in trouble. I started getting arrested a lot when I was like probably 15, like for just ridiculous, stupid things like jumping over the back fence into a nightclub and getting caught with a fake ID and stuff like ridiculous things. Like ridiculous. Like no, I wasn't any serious person at all. Like
dumb,
real
immature
low level dumb stuff.
Yeah.
And I always got caught. I wasn't fast. I wasn't running very fast. I was never getting away from the police if I got chased. And that started happening when I was like 15 and just continued forever. Just always something happened. And it always seemed to happen whenever my old man went on holidays, because he'd always say to me before he went off for work for a couple of weeks, where he was like, now just don't get in any strife. And I'm like, yeah, I won't.
Wow.
Like, look him in the eyes, yeah, I won't. And I believed it.
Did you actually?
I 100% believed
And you
I
still
believed
found a
it.
way.
Like, still, like 48 hours later, I'm sitting in a police station and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, man. You just can't go away, because every time you go away, I get in strife.
So it was like you were just trapped in this space, or energy was just around you that you were just attracting.
Oh, yeah, I
shit.
couldn't stop. So what happened was I would drink and take drugs or whatever, and I would just change. Like my whole behavior and personality would change, and I couldn't care. And I really didn't.
How would it change? Like from.
Like, I guess I was generally, I thought, pretty like happy-go-lucky and having a good time and stuff. But if I took drugs and alcohol sometimes, I could just snap. Because I'd spent so long in my life not dealing with how I felt, like losing my leg, like I felt really ripped off, about life, and really like I was a victim.
Yeah.
So when I drink, I'd get blind and just get really angry at the world.
Yeah.
And just get really angry at the world and just lash out and do stupid things. And as a result, like I'd always get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
And that stuff just continued to happen more and more. And when I was older, like a lot of my mates were doing the same stuff as me, but seemed to not be getting arrested as much or doing stupid things like that. And like waking up, I'd just wake up all the time and be like, what did I do last night?
Yeah. Really? Like, just blacked out.
Yeah, like do heaps of stuff like that. And it was just a regular. I thought that was how things happened for everyone.
Yeah.
I knew I did it to excess, but it just continued to happen. And when I did stuff, I couldn't guarantee what I was going to be like. I couldn't guarantee what was going to happen when I went out. Like, people would be like, you can't come because you are a risk. And it's like,
really? So people would actually just acknowledge, like, maybe stay at home because we're flight risk.
Yeah, well, a lot of the guys at school weren't happy with my behavior. Like I was reckless, and I ruined things, and I broke things, and like, I go to schoolies and I get told I can't go to the boys' house because they've got a bond that's too expensive and they can't trust me. And it's like, yeah, that stings, but it's true. Like,
wow, really?
and I hated that.
Yeah, that
but
sucks.
It totally made sense, like, because I did do heaps of stupid stuff at schoolies as well.
Yeah.
So like, they had every right.
Yeah. So can I just touch on the part where you speak of like you obviously felt like a victim and angry at the world? Because like obviously in your situation it's very unique. It sucks, but for you, like, because I know you do a lot of work now with similar kids in similar positions to what you went through and stuff. Like, what's sort of the perspective and the journey you took to, I guess, not have that victim mentality? Like, where do you sort of stand on that now, I guess?
Look, I think the biggest thing for me was, I felt so alone and isolated from it. I didn't want to deal with anyone else that was a kid like me that had a disability or anything like that. I just didn't want to acknowledge it. Sorry. I just wanted to pretend it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And when I got older, I sort of realized, like, I went to a rehab in Sydney when I was 21, when I tried to get clean and stuff to sort of change my life. And I met a lot of guys there that like had mental health or had domestic violence in their family, or like they used drugs with their parents and had really average lives growing up. And I just remember like I'd sit in there in these groups and I'd, for a better word, whinge about how ripped off I was that I was missing a leg, and then hear about a bloke whose dad made him use drugs at like a really young age. Yeah. And I just remember thinking like, mate, your life's it's not that bad, and you don't own feeling sorry for yourself. So many other people have so much else going on. And I just got this massive sense of humility about my life that, it's not all doom and gloom. And I was just willing to accept that, to a degree, that this is my life and I have to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Because me not acknowledging it wasn't helping it at all. Like, yeah, some days I really couldn't care less that I'm missing. Like, some days still I hate it.
Yeah.
And I don't enjoy it. And I think it's really important to be upfront about that because when I was younger, I met a lot of guys that were amputees or Paralympians and stuff like that came in to meet me at hospitals or when I was older, and they were all stoked. They were all like really happy and like loving life and stuff, and I just didn't get it.
Yeah.
I'm like, mate, I don't get that. That's not me. Like, I'm filthy.
Yeah.
I'm dirty as about this, and you're telling me everything's sweet.
Yeah. You went buying it.
I'm like, nah, something's up here. This isn't, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
And that's been the biggest thing for me, is just acknowledging that everyone has something.
Now, are you that guy that goes in and you're telling them it's all sweet and they're probably thinking the same thing? Or do you still have your challenges with it?
I'm pretty upfront that, I struggled a bit for a better part of, 15, 20 years
You
about
seem
it.
like, to me, I've spoken to you about this before, you seem like you're in a really good spot.
I am.
Now,
I am now because I've done a lot of work, but I still have average days about it, When the old lady at the grocery store tells me how amazing I am, then I can do my shopping. Pretty filthy. Like, just wish you'd just give me a spell and let me just do my shopping.
Yeah, okay.
Things like that, little things like that can grate
in
me.
her mind, she's trying to give you a nice compliment, but it's like making you feel different because no compliments needed.
Yeah, no compliments needing. Like, I can do my shopping. That's all right. Yeah. This isn't that amazing.
Yeah.
Trust me. Like, I'd like to
Agreed.
think I can sometimes do some pretty spectacular things physically.
I'm sure you can.
But
which we're going to go into.
Yeah, thanks. But doing my shopping is not one of them.
Yeah.
It's pretty low level. But that's it. Some days I'm great. Some days I just get over it. And it's really just dependent on how I wake up on the day, which is like anyone with anything. Some days you just don't feel like doing it and you just got to get the job done.
Do you think like the recent events with Dylan Alcott, obviously Australian of the Year, all that he's succeeded in sport as well, do you think that's going to change the perspective on, I guess, people with disabilities or, para-athletes in general with what they can actually accomplish and I guess how they can have an impact?
Yeah. Well, I think like Dylan does a great job already, a massive sort of like influence in our community and speaks pretty highly for us and works really hard for us. So I guess that's the biggest thing, is that you can't have a platform to speak on if you don't have the success, especially if you're going to be a para-athlete. Like, he's had a lot of success sports-wise and then has taken that into other areas. It's pretty hard to create change from being a low-level athlete. It has to come from the top and it has to come from someone that has a platform, and he's been able to do that. And he advocates in a way that I think is really important, and that perception that just because you have a disability doesn't mean you're uncool or you're a bit different. Like, you can be cool, you can wear a nice pair of shoes, you can have a bit of fun, like you can be just like everyone else despite the disability.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, because that's what I think I try and emulate as well, that it really doesn't change who I am, or I don't need any pity or anything like that. I just want to go about life like everyone else.
Yeah, I understand. I can completely understand that. I'd be the exact same, I think, as well. I think just there's a couple of things that I want to talk about, but one is kind of like a segue into, I guess, how and why Liam Twomey's come to this now. But before we get into that, was just I know another sort of experience you had post high school was like you were taking so much drugs at one point, like you went into psychosis. How did that happen, and I guess how long did that last, and the pitfalls of that?
Yeah, so that sort of like came and went quite a bit, sort of when I was in my early 20s. Looking back on it now, like at the time I thought I just needed a bit more sleep, but looking back on it now, like I was pretty much like that for a while, because I was a really dodgy guy, like realistically, like like I ripped off my friends, I lied to my friends, I cheated on people, I was dishonest to my family and my friends. I was totally dishonest in every area of my life about everything I did, And as a result, like, I couldn't trust what I did, or like I knew that people couldn't trust what I did as well. And when I had mates that took drugs and did things exactly like me, and they used to say, mate, you can't do that anymore. Like we can't, you keep getting in strife and doing the wrong thing. You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Like that's when you know you're not in a good spot.
Yeah.
And the guy's doing the same thing as you are like, nah, you're you're way off, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just fell into this psychosis a couple of times and it's just pretty bad. Like I spent my whole life as a teenager, like trying to be someone else, you know, like I was like a scared little guy, like physically and like mentally, you know, so as a result, I tried to be like a real tough guy and like I wasn't afraid of anything.
Yeah.
And when I fell into those sort of episodes, like I couldn't hide how I felt. Like I was terrified.
Oh, really?
I was terrified and I just wanted it to stop.
So that made you vulnerable.
Yeah. And I had to be myself and I just couldn't stop what I was doing and my behavior. And I just got to the point, I just woke up from one of those sort of experiences one weekend.
It just clicked.
And just thought like, I never want to feel like this anymore.
Yeah.
Like that guilt and shame and remorse and just like embarrassment about my behavior, especially in front of my family, was really heavy. And I just woke up and it was like the first time I woke up and felt like that. And I didn't think, I should probably go get on. Like that'll make me feel better. I just thought that could not help this situation at all.
Right.
Like, and that's pretty much, I've been clean since then.
Wow, it's crazy, man. Because I was worried about you at one point, and you're going to know this story because we've spoken about it so many times. But for the listeners out there, when I left high school when I was 15, and then I signed my first pro contract to Gold Coast when I was 17. But just before I moved up, I was turning 18, and so I was coming back to Melbourne to like have a party. I was like, fuck, I want to have a birthday party. It's 18th, but I'm like, I don't really have that many mates here anymore because I've been gone for like 3-4 years. But then I got really close with Twomey Bug, who's been on the show before, and I think he's going to feature on the show very soon as well. And so we're like, well, he's only been at Caulfield for a few years. He doesn't have too many friends, and I don't. So he's like, well, let's just join our 18s together. So we had this big party at at this venue near Riva in St Kilda, and everyone came from school, and like we're all having fun. Everyone was getting drunk. Like probably, I hadn't drank really much up until then. So like it was kind of my first experience drinking. And you can imagine me just coming out of the AIS going into a pro environment. And then whilst we're at the party, the troubled maker at the time, Liam Twomey, found a definite way to make some trouble. And I don't actually know what happened. So I do want you to clarify this. But from my understanding, I was told that you were selling drugs in the toilet. And all I remember, and I just say again, I don't know if that's true, right? But what I do remember, because I visually saw it, was then like 3 people or 2 people were like chasing you outside, like ready to punch on. Yeah. And I just remember seeing you like run off, and like sort of like I was like, what the fuck just happened there? Because one of my mates who was there now, he's actually like in some serious trouble. He's locked up, but he took his top off and was like staunching you, and I'm like, oh my God, no, like that's not going to end well. Yeah. But then you just darted off, and I was like, that was the last I saw of you or heard of you until I'll touch on the next phase of like what was like 6-7 years later. Yeah. So I don't know what happened. Was that wrong or accurate?
I don't think I was actually selling anything. I think I was just using a lot in there.
It's just all for me, not for you.
Yeah, I was a pig. I wasn't sharing around. I think I made a few too many trips there, and then I got in a bit of strife, and I did a few random things. Like I think I like finished a beer and like threw it across the room and hit Damien Simic in the eye and like gave him a black eye. Oh, and I came to school on Monday and he goes, you bottled me. And I'm like, oh, no, that wasn't me, man. Everyone's like, no, that was definitely you. You just threw it. And then I think I got into a fight with a bloke at school that I had a bit of grievances with for a while. Right. But that was my thing. Like I botched a few 18ths. Like, unfortunately, I botched pretty much every 18th I went to that year.
I do. I remember. I just remember that was like, it stood out to me. And I was like, I was like genuinely worried about you because I was going on a path where I was about to be a professional athlete. Exactly. So, I wasn't really hanging around too many people that were doing the things that you were doing at the time. So, like, for me on the outside, I was like, fuck, man, he's, like, potentially out of control. Yeah. But this is where it gets amazing. And I know we've shed a bit of light on the darkness, but it's because it shows how bright the actual light is. But I actually think, and when Tommy does come on the show, I want to clarify if we were together. But it would have been, from my 18th, it might have been... What do you reckon when you messaged us? Was it 8 or 9 years later?
Yeah, geez, it would have been like 2016 or 17. Probably I got claimed in 2015, so a couple of years later.
Yeah, so maybe 5-6 years after my 18th. And I've got a feeling we were together, or he just sent me a screenshot of your message. But you sent me and him a message, and I've actually learned as life's gone on the past few years when I've connected with more people from Caulfield that I wasn't the only one that got a message, which is interesting, which I want to hear about. But you sent me like a really long, detailed message, just like apologizing for your actions and stuff. And like to the point where like I didn't give a shit. And also like it was so far gone, I'd kind of forgotten about it.
Yeah.
But for you to do that, I was like, what it told me was like, oh, he's making changes. And like, I don't know if you remember what I said, but I was like, man, it's fucking all good. Like, completely fine. But I was like, me and Buggy were just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, it was pretty cool of you to do that.
Yeah, it was. I'll big note, it was pretty cool. No, like that was sort of my experience. Like when I got clean, like I guess the stuff I did to try and fix how I was or my behavior was, because a lot of my behavior wasn't acceptable, you know, and I didn't want to just get clean and start a new life and think that like what I did was okay. And a lot of the people I ripped off or like, ruined things for, like events and promos and stuff like that, like I was mates with. And I felt horrible about it at the time, but I just didn't have like the emotional or mental capacity to say like, hey, sorry. I just couldn't do that at the time. I wasn't able to. I didn't realize. And yeah, like I look back on things like that and think, geez, I did not handle that well. You know, like I've made an absolute ass of myself. And that's what I mean. Like you guys weren't the only ones, especially from Caulfield. Yeah. A lot of the stuff I did at Caulfield, I looked back on and I'm like, oh, geez, I wouldn't have liked if people spoke to me like that or did things like that to me. I would have hated that. And I did, because people did do stuff like that to me.
Yeah,
so,
no, that's right.
Yeah, so I think it was really important to acknowledge that my behavior wasn't cool. And I never expected anyone to actually be like, no, you're all good, mate. That's sweet. Because that's not the point. The point was more just me saying like, that wasn't okay. I don't actually agree with that. And I apologize for like any angst or trouble I caused, because you don't know how much you affect people. Like I had a lot of experiences because people from Caulfield weren't the only people I reached out to. Yeah. I had a pretty long list. And some people were not happy at all. And some people had carried things for a long time because of how I behaved. Really? And some of them I didn't even think much of, but it meant a lot to them. Yeah. So that's why it was so big to me to bring it back and be like, geez, it wasn't good what I did. And I had to acknowledge that and just see what happened. And it's great to have a good response from it. Yeah. And have a good relationship, especially afterwards. But it is also not about that.
Yeah. No, I know. It's I can understand that. So to touch on sobriety, because what are you now? 6, 7 years sober?
Yeah, like 6.5, 7 in June. Yeah.
Wow, shout out, bro.
Yeah, that's bad.
That's massive. Here I am hungover after the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And you're 6, 7 years sober, mate. That is, honestly, mate, very proud of you. That's insane.
Thank you.
When did this, like, I know you sort of mentioned a few sort of, the penny drop moments, but when did it really sort of change for you? Did you start your detox in Melbourne, or was it when you moved to Sydney?
Nah, so look, I went to a youth rehab when I was like 19. Because I thought it'd help me with something I was going through at court. I thought it'd just be a good sort of get out of jail free card. And I turned up and I couldn't have cared less. And I really just like went there and just thought, nah, this isn't for me. I'll just do whatever and go back to what I was doing. And I got clean here and I actually got arrested, and this police officer actually felt really sorry for me, which is never a good sign. He thought, mate, he goes, you're not in a good spot, man. He found me just like wandering around in the middle of like Sandringham in the middle of the day. And he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know where I was. And he called my folks and they came and picked me up. Like, he didn't arrest me because I was just in trouble already. He said, look, mate, if you go to rehab or detox, like, we'll just let it slide. But you need to sort yourself out because you're...
Shout out to that cop.
Yeah, shout out. Yeah, I thought he was... I was hating that he was making me do that. I was like, man, just don't call my folks here. Just arrest us and we'll just sort it out later. Like, I'll sort it out later. Don't worry about it. Like, just so flippant with my life. And...
How many times do you reckon you got arrested? Like,
well, I don't know. Maybe 10 plus.
Wow, so like a decent amount.
Not for anything too.
Yeah, just but enough
just
to
stupid stuff
to give
all
you
the time
on the wrist.
Yeah, all the time. And like what happened was that I went to this detox. I got clean. Like I woke up that day and I got clean, and I went to the detox like 10 days later, and I'm like, oh, I don't know about this. Like, not really for me. I was already sort of clean and thinking, I could just drink, or I could just do this and just do that. And I got there and I just realized like I didn't want to keep doing what I was doing anymore. Like I was so over it. Yeah. It was so like at that point, all my good mates had dropped me. Like because of my behavior, and I just realized like I didn't really have anyone around anymore. Like there was no fun. I wasn't going to nightclubs. I wasn't going out. I wasn't doing anything fun. Just like using at a house with people and driving around all the time.
Yeah.
It was pretty grim.
Yeah.
And there was no fun to it, and I didn't like the people I hung around with. And I went to this detox, and I just sort of felt like relief,
Yeah.
which I hadn't felt for a while. And I just went to they took us to like a NA meeting, like or whatever, and I met a bloke there that I used to use with, and I thought he was hopeless. I
So
thought
what were you using, like heroin, or were you using like?
Nah. So that was pretty much like one of the like only things I didn't use. Like
Yeah.
what sort of brought me unstuck realistically was using ice. Like,
Ice, okay.
yeah, like very quickly. Like doesn't have to be for a long time for me, but I sort of change ice and pills and stuff just turn me into a bit of a monster.
Yeah.
And I just want to do
most
bad
people.
Yeah, like most people. I just want to do bad things,
Yeah.
and like it just changes my personality so quickly, and
Yeah.
I just have no control over when I stop. Once I start, I don't know when I'm going to stop with that stuff. And
Right. So you're in this AA meeting and you meet a guy that
Yeah.
you were using with.
Yeah.
No way.
yeah, that's happened a few times to be honest.
Okay.
It's happened a few times, and I met him, and I used to think he was a bit of a dropkick, to be honest. Like I thought this bloke's never gonna, he's useless, he's never gonna get clean, and he was cleaner than I was, and he was sort of happy and healthy, and I just thought, man, like if this bloke can do it, like how can I not do it?
Yeah.
Like I've got to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And
Louis, at that point in time, were you actually wanting to be clean though, or were you just doing it to kind of tick boxes, stay out of trouble, maybe just fix a few things, or were you actually trying to get clean?
I don't think I actually gauged that I was going to stay clean for that long or like at all. Because when I went to that detox, I was the youngest one by like a couple of years. Most people were in their mid-40s and, had a whole life behind them. And I was 21 and young and angry and really did not think it was for me. And I was very like volatile in there because I just brought all my behavior in with me. And I just sort of hung around and was like, I'm just not going to use, like I got in a few situations where I could have used and I just didn't want to. And the options were there. And I was actually terrified of using because I hadn't had a good few experiences the last couple of weeks. And I just didn't want to have to do that again and again. Yeah. It was just tiring. Yeah.
Right. That's crazy. So have you made the moves, like just off the story you're saying, are you in Sydney at this point, or is this sort of a next phase? Because I know you said you went and lived in Sydney, like pretty much with no clue what you were doing.
Yeah.
You just went and changed
Pretty
your
much.
environment.
Yeah. So I did the detox, and the detox was like, hey mate, look, so this is only a 4-week program. You probably need a few more weeks.
Oh, really? Okay.
They goes, this great place up in Sydney. It's really good, really easy to get into. It's long term. You'll be there like 12 months, easy as.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, all right, whatever. Because at that time, I didn't want to go home and just sit at home and do nothing because I knew like being that bored, I was going to go back to what I was doing probably.
Yeah.
So I just sort of legged it, like I hung around for a bit and then I just legged it up there. And I got there and I got picked up, like the place is called like We Help Ourselves. So like it's run by the people that are there. Like there's staff members, but it's pretty much run by all the people that are living there.
Right.
So I'm like sitting out the front of Central Station in Sydney, like across from the dental hospital, and these two old fellas come and pick me up in a druggy buggy and just like, come on mate, get in, we'll take you there. And I'm like, geez, this isn't what I expected.
Oh my God.
I've just gone from a really nice sort of detox in East Melbourne, private detox in East Melbourne.
Banged up van.
Yeah, to a banged up van with a couple of old fellas. Like, come on mate, just get in, we'll sort you out. And I'm like, all right. And I get there and I'm just like, yeah, no, this isn't for me. Like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And it was just like a men's house that I stayed in. So there's like 35 of us.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty loose. And, most of it, because it's public, like guys come straight from jail or off the street or drug court and just like wanting to get clean. So it's a mixed bag of what you get.
Wow.
And I actually really liked it.
Yeah, was it good?
Yeah. For me, I found rehab to actually be a very fun experience.
Like just from the social aspect and connecting with other people, or just
In that
like having
sense.
like you're not going to get into the same trouble.
Yeah, no, you can definitely get in the same trouble there. Like,
Can you? Well, when you said public, I was like,
Yeah.
does that stop it? Like,
nah, not at all. Like where I was at was actually like, it's called like harm minimization. So it means that they have like
Right.
fit packs in the bathroom if you want to use and stuff like that. So
right.
obviously they're not wanting you to, and you do drug tests and stuff like that. But they were pretty keen to just like look after you. And people come in like they've used like an hour ago, and they'll come in
Yeah.
and they're staying, and you got to look after them and stuff like that.
Right,
And
okay.
it was pretty interesting what goes on.
Yeah.
But I liked it because I didn't have to worry about anything else. I just had to stay there and not take drugs and not do anything to get myself punted, and everything else would take care of itself. Like we looked after ourselves and cooked and ate and cleaned the house and did all these things that I'd never done because I was just like inherently lazy and just like self-entitled. And then they tell me that I have to make my bed like an army style bed, or I have to write a page about discipline, later that night, a whole A4 page about discipline as punishment. That was like the thing. You get in trouble, you write yourself up.
Okay.
So like you just do everything.
You don't want to do that.
No, you just do everything properly from then on out, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so how long were you at that clinic for? Were you in Sydney for a while? Were you always at the rehab place?
No, so I stayed there for like 12 months. Like they had like 3 separate houses, like an intensive one for like 3 months, then or 4 months, and a halfway house, and then like an exit house in Redfern. And I was living in the house in Redfern, and one of my mates who was up there was living in this place in Bondi, and it was really sweet. And I'm like, how you got this gig? And it ended up being like youth accommodation for like under 25s. And all you had to do to stay there was sort of pretty much be like looking to study or work, and not having anywhere to go. And I was up there and I reached out to him and got my own place, and I started living in Bondi as well. And it was, big shift.
Yeah.
Big shift from...
You managed to stay sober in Bondi.
Yeah. I know, right?
That's a win.
For a couple of years.
That's a huge win.
Yeah. It was just such a like amazing like experience.
It's a beautiful place. Man.
Yeah. Beautiful place, beautiful people. And like I found myself, I was doing really cool work up there and like teaching kids to swim and like really involved like with where I was living. So it was an awesome experience. And I pretty much just had the Bondi unemployment tan. Like I sat at the beach all day, didn't do much else. And like people wondered, I wonder what that guy does. Like, does he work? Like, how does he live here?
He's living the dream, man.
Pretty much.
So at this point in time, have you started to make the connection to sport, triathlons, swimming? Like where is this when this sort of connection starts to be built there and you start to have sort of a vehicle to push yourself into, I guess?
Yeah, a little bit. It sort of more so started when I was at the rehab, actually, because they take us for exercise, obviously, a couple of days a week. And I used to do a lot of walking, and I used to have heaps of pain with my leg at that point. So a couple of the other guys that had sort of injuries would always go to the pool, and I was like, oh, yeah, get me on that. I'll go to that. And I just remember getting in the pool, and for me, the biggest thing about, like, getting in the pool was realizing that like I had to take my leg off in public, which realistically I hadn't done like my whole life.
Yeah.
I'd been so self-absorbed about it. I hadn't done it. I got to this pool and I realized I had to take it off to get in. And I took it off and jumped in and I just felt amazing. Like,
oh, really?
Like it felt so freeing for me, like physically and mentally to jump in and do that.
Wow.
That I just couldn't have cared less. I felt like I was swimming like so well and so nicely, and I was not at all. Like I was,
yeah,
drowned.
But your mind was free.
But I was actually free of my own like self-absorption of like what I thought and what other people thought. Because realistically, no one at the pool gave a stuff. No one's paying any attention to me really, for the most part. And I was able to do it and just enjoy what I was doing. And I just thought, like, this is sick. Like, I want to do this, And I just started swimming pretty obsessively when I could at the pool. And that's when I sort of just thought, you know what, like, how hard could this Paralympic thing be?
Yeah.
Like, why not?
Why not me?
Why not? Yeah, like, why not? Like, I'm here, I'm clean. I'm living in the middle of, like, Roselle at the moment at the time. I'm thinking, my life has not turned out in any way how I thought.
Yeah.
Why can't I do this?
Yeah.
And turns out it's actually really hard.
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah. My uncle said something to me once. It always stuck out to me. He goes, because he was telling his mate, he's like, because my uncle he played like in the reserves for Blackburn Rovers in the English Premier League, so he'd never quite made it, but he was like as close as you can get to playing the best league in the world. And he was telling his friend, he was pointing at me, he's like, no, he actually wants it. He wants to make it. And then his friend goes, well, someone has to. Yeah. And it always stuck out to me. So it's like, yeah, it's true. Someone's got to make it. So why can't it be you?
Yeah.
But so when did you start sort of getting into the like competitive events and like getting a name for yourself and starting to have sort of the brand and stuff that you built now? Because the reason why I asked that as well is when me and Buggy got those texts from you after like, was it 5-6 years after our 18th? It's like, fuck, Liam Twomey, like what's he doing now? I went on your page, your Instagram page, and like my jaw dropped. I think at that point in time, you might have, I think it was 2018, because I think you'd just done a triathlon.
Yeah.
Like you'd done a triathlon or something. So I was like, what the hell? Like you'd absolutely destroy me on a fitness basis. It was insane. So yeah, when did like the event stuff start happening?
Yeah. So I started trying to do swimming first off because I hadn't really done much of the other stuff, and swimming wasn't really for me. Like I didn't like racing in a pool, I found it really boring and it wasn't enjoyable. And to be honest, for what I wanted to do to go to the Paralympics, like it wasn't going to be an option. Like I rated myself to a degree, or thought, why not? But sometimes you got to realize that there is a capability that I may not have in that capacity. And I just got involved. I met this bloke who'd been to the Paralympics in Rio, and he was a leg amp like me. And he was like, "Oh man, you got to do triathlon. Like you're built to do You're not built to be a swimmer. Like you're small and like lean. Like you need to do triathlon. You'll be fine. Come do this one with me in a couple of weeks." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, man. Like I've never."
You hadn't done one before, I
Nah,
assume?
like at this point, I'd really never run in my life much, apart from playing sport here and there.
Wow.
I didn't have a running leg. I'd never run 5K. I didn't own a
Yeah,
bike.
What's a triathlon for?
So
like,
what
in
I do
Paralympics?
to try and go for the Paralympics stage is like a sprint distance triathlon.
Okay.
So it's a 750-meter ocean swim or lake swim or whatever.
Yeah.
A 20-kilometer bike ride and a 5-kilometer run.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's not easy.
Nah,
My God.
it's a stinger.
So is that just for the Paralympic level? Is that
Yeah.
different for the other events that maybe you've competed in, or is it similar? It's
Yeah,
the
no.
same
So
sort of
that's always
standard?
the same. That's sort of the
Okay.
standard. Yeah, that's what I would do.
So
yeah.
that's what this bloke was asking
Yeah,
you
he's
to do.
like, come do that, man.
But that's 700-meter swim in the open water. That's
Yeah, I
that
know.
can be 2Ks on a bad day. Like, do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
You can swim on the
Exactly.
spot with the swell.
And I'd been doing a bit of swimming at that point, so I thought, oh, this would be all right. But I'd never really swum in the open water or anything like that. Just swum in a pool. And yeah, I wasn't keen on doing it because I'd had a few people say that sort of stuff, like, just come do it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I will. I'll get around to it. Yeah, I will. And he just sent me the link and was like, you have to sign this now to do this if you want to come and race with us. And I'm like, all right, man. Like, I'll do it. Geez, stop like harassing me. And I
It was
signed
a
up.
break.
I signed up and I had to start training from then, sort of, and just look after myself and do a few things here and there. And like, I had no idea what I was doing. And I turned up to the race and it was in St Kilda and it had like pissed down all weekend. So they cancelled the swim and said, oh yeah, we're going to run more. I'm like, you're kidding.
It was what, just swim your strong?
Yeah,
Like
pretty
strong-
much. At that point, I'd never really run. I'd never run 5K straight.
But would you have swum in open water by then or ocean?
Nah, but I still would have preferred that to running more.
Yeah.
You know?
okay, Yeah.
And, I lined up with these guys and like we all sprinted out and I'm sprinting out. I'm like, oh, I'm on fire here. Like I'm killing it, killing it. And I got to my bike and I was like, oh, geez, like we had to run 2.5K at the start and I just sprinted it and I just spent the next hour or so just like groveling. Just like, oh, this is not a good, I did not pace this at all, because I wasn't fit. I had no idea what I was doing. I just like excited.
Yeah.
And like, I was so blissfully unaware when I started triathlon,
Yeah.
like I just had no idea, like I honestly turned up to that race and I had a few mates there and stuff. And one of my mates goes, look, it's not a big deal. Like when we're walking down to the start line, it's not a big deal, but your race suit's on backwards.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah,
That's the funny part.
It's not a big deal.
Oh, it's a massive deal.
It's a
'cause
massive
you said
deal.
it's not a big deal.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that makes so much
So
sense.
were you obviously nervous at this point,
Oh,
or like what?
yeah,
Just
shitting myself.
shitting yourself.
Shitting myself about having to do this and like so overwhelmed by it. And then I get told, mate, you got you absolute plonker. You've got your suit on
Did you have
backwards.
time to change it?
Yeah, luckily. Thank
Okay,
God.
yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have lived that one down.
Yeah, that's crazy. Imagine
Probably
that.
won't live it down. None of the publicly shared it as well. But like that was it. Like no clue.
Yeah.
But I did the race and I got through it and I actually enjoyed it. Despite how painful it was physically to get through it, I enjoyed the experience way more than swimming.
Really?
And I enjoyed the community and the people around it because they were actually welcoming and enjoyed it. And I was like, well, this is all right. Like I could get used to this, And that's sort of just how it went from there. I've just sort of gone like crazy into it from there. Yeah.
So from that experience, you've continuously sort of started training, doing more events.
Yeah.
And then how did you sort of get recognised to be sort of, in contention to be sort of going to the Paralympics? Because I know
Yeah.
you've done some travelling with athletes that are aiming to go there or that have been there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, so I did that first race I did was like a para sort of Oceania race. So there was people there that were involved with like Triathlon Australia and whatever. And then I got sort of categorized from there, I guess. So I got put on the team to a degree and was able to go race internationally. And that first year in 2018 went to Canada and did a couple races overseas internationally, which was like an amazing experience
Wow.
for someone who 6 months ago had never done anything.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I got flogged.
And yeah, but at this point in time, it's like the fact that you're there doing these things, and
Yeah.
when you could be locked in a dark house using
Exactly.
ice, it's like it's pretty amazing the
Yeah.
trajectory and change you've made.
Yeah, when I'm sitting in this little quaint town in Quebec,
Yeah, where they speak French.
yeah, thinking this is not my life. This is pretty sweet.
That's
know?
unbelievable,
Yeah.
man.
So that was the coolest thing, I guess, that things happened really quickly for me in that space. But also, I just was so stoked about it that I wasn't really too fussed about the results. But I went over there and I got smashed by everyone that I raced.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't want to feel like this anymore. Like I want
So you, in your mind, that was like a motivation to get better.
Exactly. And I wasn't really training properly at that time. I was just doing my own thing and still trying to live in Bondi and have all the good things. And sometimes, like you moved as well, you understand, like you have to move or you have to go to where's better for you for your career. And for me, it was to move back to Melbourne and join a squad here. And like, it's been the best thing I've done. Like I miss Sydney, but it's been so good to come back and actually join and train in a proper like high performance squad.
Really? So there's like so there's a crew of you that are doing what, bike, swimming and running, like collectively through the week or whatever.
On my group, like a low-tech triathlon, so pretty much like athletes, like elite athletes trying to go to either the Paralympics or the Olympics. Realistically, that's sort of what you're going for, and that's it. So we do that, and most of the guys train full-time and do other things on the side, and yeah, it's a good environment to be in, to be honest. Like, it's been great for me. I've like loved it, so it's cool.
It's pretty surreal, like not just your trajectory into sort of, I guess, triathlons, but how quickly you've accelerated like performance as well. Because was it 2019 you qualified for the World Championships?
Yeah.
Which is, and what you came just outside of the top 10.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is pretty surreal if you just run your first one or still there wasn't a swimming league, but running a bike the first one a year before.
Yeah. Yeah. That happened pretty quick. That was pretty cool. I went overseas that year as well. My squad goes over to Spain, usually in Aussie winter, which is a good way to get out of here when it's cold. And went over there and I sort of had one race planned and didn't know what else was going to happen. And I just lucked out and got another couple races and I turned up and just had belters, like I had good races for myself and qualified and got selected. And just to be there, like I was so stoked, because that hadn't been my experience at all. And I got injured as well pretty early on because my body's so like fresh to sport. So I've had to deal with niggles quite regularly. And I'm there racing and I'm like in Lausanne in Switzerland racing and I just think, this is sick.
That's like a yourself moment, isn't it? Like I'm at the World Championships.
Exactly. Like I'm racing like the best guys in the world and like I'm actually having fun doing it. Because when I started racing, I was like petrified about the whole experience, Like I'm packing it because I know I'm going to like be in the hurt locker for an hour and I'm not fit and I'm not ready for it. But when I got to that big race, I just was like, this is awesome.
Oh, really?
Like I love this.
Wow.
Yeah.
But do you reckon that's because of you put in the work to get to that point, or were you just refreshed and just wanted to do it as opposed to feared it?
I think I was just so grateful to have that experience and to be where I was and realize that I've had a lot of pretty heavy moments in my life, and that was a pretty good moment and experience for me and week or weekend or whatever, how long it was. And I just realized like, this is it. Like, just go for it. Like, I have nothing to lose. There's no expectation on me to go out to win, but there's like every opportunity for me to just put in my best and see how I can race.
Wow.
And I just raced my heart out really. And I wasn't fit enough to race as well as I would have liked, but I came out of it and like did well, for myself, for where I was at and against my competition, I did well.
That's
so
insane.
That was really cool for me to realize like, oh, you're actually not. You're not a total packer at this.
Well, aren't you
okay.
aren't you in the top 20 in the world or something?
Yeah, at the moment I think I'm like 19th. Yeah, I haven't raced in a while, so 19th's a little bit.
Is that probably COVID though? Wouldn't it be?
COVID and injury and a few things. Like I haven't raced internationally for better part of 2 years, really.
Wow.
Which is pretty annoying. So hopefully get stuck into a bit of that this year. But yeah, that's the plan. Like for me to make the Paralympics, I have to be in the top 10. In the last 12 months sort of leading up to...
So it's top 10 globally, not just like nationally?
Yeah. Well, top 10 in each classification because obviously there's different classifications. Like I race guys missing a leg below the knee or their whole arm, and
Okay.
that sort of levels it out a bit. And then there's obviously like a vision impaired class, a wheelchair class, and then other sort of physical impairments. So there's probably maybe 70 to 100 people all racing on the same day, like staggered through the morning or afternoon or whatever, but they're all racing similar disabilities. So it's a bit of a, it's hard to watch. It's hard to know what's going on if you don't, if you don't actually follow it properly. It's hard to follow and see who's racing who and who's ahead and whatever. But we know, like you can tell when you're racing who you're racing against. So that's the biggest thing, like getting that top 10.
Well, you had the pain of just missing out on the Paralympics just gone, but what's the sort of goal now? Is it to look to sort of is it Paris the next one, or is that sort of where all your energy and focus is going to be going into to try and get there now, or
pretty much. So that's my plan. So Tokyo was always going to be a long shot because I started the sport so late and halfway through a cycle and everything like that. So I gave it everything to try and get into there, but it didn't happen, and that sucks. But it was great to watch my mates there, and I had a couple teammates there, and then to obviously qualify for Paris is the main goal. Like that sort of, I've been in the sport for a while. By that point, I'm sort of, I'll be 30. It'll be sort of prime time, and I'd like to think that because I'm so fresh to the sport, I have a long time left in it.
Yeah, bloody oath.
And it is triathlon. You can be a little bit older, which works well.
Yeah, definitely.
Which works very well. But that's the plan. Like I love what I do. Like most of the time, like 85% of the time, I love getting to do this every day.
Yeah. And
the experiences I have. So I'm just gonna give it a run until I'm too old or no good. Really.
Yeah. Your story, honestly, man, it's unbelievable, honestly. And it's why I was so keen. Those listening, you can see why I was so keen to share Liam's story, because of the trajectory of where he's going now from where he was and the experiences we had as kids. Obviously, our friendship is, it's great to be able to talk about it and so transparently on your behalf as well. So I really appreciate it. But, man, incredible. Like, honestly, you're an inspiration to many people. You're like an ambassador for about 15 different brands. Like, you're doing all this work, giving back to, to people, the, I guess, children with disabilities as well that have probably gone through similar experiences you via school or, sport, whatever it may be. And you've got a whole bunch of awards as well, like from the AIS and the Dylan Alcott Foundation, where you've been recognised as like for what you're doing as well. So, mate, pretty surreal.
It very much is. And it's funny, all those things have worked because I've had that, I guess, hard experiences in life. People relate. I think people really resonate with a tough story and experience because they think, how do you get through that? And for me, I don't feel that as much because it's my experience. I just think, I'm just average Joe Blow. What else would I have done? Yeah. And I've taken the long way of getting here to where I am, and it's really cool to be able to do that stuff and give back. And like speaking at schools for me is like baffling.
Yeah, it baffles me too.
Like, given my history at school, and my
that gets
behaviour
overlooked,
at school,
doesn't it now?
Yeah, and like when I go and speak to schools and kids are.
To be fair though, that probably makes sense for why you'd be so powerful to them because of what you were like.
Well, it's hard. I think sometimes it's hard for them to gauge when I turn up that it's like, I actually wasn't really happy-go-lucky at school and really into this and into all the positivity and gratitude and stuff. Like, I just wanted to like rip on the people. So like that was it's cool. Like, it's a really cool life to have.
Mate, Liam Twomey, well, thank you for coming on the show, man, for sharing your story. It's unbelievable. We'll definitely be watching you over the upcoming years of the events, and I'm got no doubt in my mind if you keep going the way you're going, we'll see you in Paris, brother. So,
mate, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
It's been good.
Cheers.
Cheers, bro.